I kept saying to my husband, he felt like it was time for me to leave. And I'd say, I think I made a huge mistake. I didn't sleep for probably 8 months after I retired. I kept thinking I made a mistake because I loved my job. I loved what I was doing, but I just felt like, I just needed a time out. Maybe I should have just taken a leave of absence for a while and gone back, but I thought that I made the biggest mistake in my life. But yeah, it was time.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 159. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before I get into it today, if you like this show or any other shows, please subscribe or leave a review. I'm trying to get more exposure. Try. Today's guest, our mutual friend Gordon did this intro, which is really cool. Gordon was a great guest on the show, so when he recommends people, usually I'm like, yes, of course. So please name and who you are.
Oh, my name is Kathy Macdonald, and I'm a mother, a wife, a dog owner. Lifelong Albertan, lived in Calgary for decades and decades. I'm a retired Calgary Police Service officer, and I have a business, and I do presentations around cybersecurity, and that's how, of course, I know Gordon. I'm a big tennis fan, and I like to admit that I'm also a wannabe lounge singer. So this is a beautiful place for my first act, maybe.
and that's why you're scouting it out. Now I understand why.
Exactly.
This room is awesome.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got so much atmosphere built into it.
It really does.
When Gordon sent over your name, what I do is I just quickly Google, to make sure, because it's like artists, entrepreneurs, and athletes who live in Calgary. That's the kind of those are the kind of types of people that come on the show. Right. So anyways, I went to their website. I was like, oh shit, this is going to be an interesting conversation. Have you seen one of these? Did you listen to one?
I have.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. So I can't wait to hear your backstory. So take this thing back as far as you want to go. Where you grew up, how you grew up, parents, siblings, jobs, and so go as far back as you want.
Okay.
And we'll kind of weave our way to where you are today.
All right. Well, my dad was an RCMP officer. So I grew up in small town Alberta, and back then they used to move the RCMP every 3 years. So we lived in a number of different small towns, and we lived right in the police barracks. So on one side was a courthouse, on the other side was a jail, and our family would grow up, and live in the middle part of the office. And it was a working office. Police were coming and going all day long doing their job, and that's kind of how I grew up. My dad was just a great guy, lots of fun, real practical joker. Yep. And he ran the barracks, I guess, the police officer for the town. And my mom was a homemaker. She'd bake bread and she made pies. And, it's kind of fun because she never had, she was a homemaker. She didn't work. She never worked. She never drove. And it was kind of fun because my dad, if he was out on a call in the middle of the night, my mom would answer the phone and have to give him directions. And I can just imagine now that I know what police work is like, what kind of directions she probably gave him, It's kind of fun. But that's how I grew up. My dad was stationed up in northern Alberta. And after he left depot in Regina, and that's where he met my mom. And my mom grew up in a little hamlet called Atikamekw in northern Alberta. And her dad was a factor for the Hudson Bay Company. So Reverion Frères was the name of the company, which turned into Hudson Bay. And he ran the Hudson Bay store. So my mom came from a large family of 8. Her mom was born in Fort Chipewyan. So they're all real pioneers. My mom... again, coming from a family of 8, they had to make their own fun. It was pretty isolated, so she was a great dancer. She could sing. My dad stationed in a local, a nearby town of High Prairie. Back then when they graduated from the RCMP, they couldn't get married for 5 years. So there's stories of him getting a bush plane with a friend, flying over Atikamekw and throwing love letters out to my mom. So anyway, they courted and finally got married and had 3 kids, and I was the youngest. And then we started moving around Alberta.
growing up in the RCMP world.
Yeah.
Did you, so for some context, my dad was a fireman.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. So
Wow.
I like different, but the same,
Awesome.
right? Like
Yes.
shift work,
Totally.
service, kind of that
Yeah.
idea. So obviously this is fascinating, right? So, but growing up in that RCMP world on the barracks, moving around, is it the classic story of like the ones we hear about, like just on the go, interesting situations, always trying to like recreate yourself when you get to a new town and like see where you fit? Was it all that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think so. We'd always be moving to a new town. You'd have your best friends.
Yeah.
Back then, we didn't have the internet. So you'd have your best friends that you did everything with, and then you'd move away. And so you'd have to write letters to them. And you probably would write letters for 6 months, and then that would slowly dwindle down.
Yeah.
I have, looked up my old best friends and kept in touch that way. But it was always new. And then my dad, he retired in, early 70s, and we moved to Calgary, and we've been here ever since. So
When you're growing up, was it all school? Was there sport in the mix? Like as a youngster, what were you into?
yeah, I was a tomboy. I was very physical. I'd play every kind of sport possible, and that was our whole life. Recess, you'd run out and grab the baseball diamond, and I'd play with the boys, and I was always really fit and strong, and I could run fast, but I never had any formal lessons of any kind. I figure I probably could have been a really good tennis player, maybe, but I dream of that. But back then, people didn't have formal lessons in sports like they do now. But yeah, I was very physical and loved sports, and that was what we would do. We would play, kick the can and
Love that.
tag and all those kinds of games. Yeah.
You have kids now.
Yeah. One.
So different, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up, I was born in 77.
Oh, okay.
So growing up had similar experiences, right? Always outside, always playing games, just there's no internet. TV was an extra, you couldn't just sit there and watch it. Weren't allowed to do that. So you're always outside
Right.
trying to figure out. But now it's wildly different. Like
Totally different. Yeah, absolutely.
as you're explaining it, it sounds so, it's like a different world.
It is a
how
different
simple
world.
it was and how basic it was. Just go outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when I joined the police, now I joined late 80s. And back then, very few people had access to the internet. We didn't really have it until early 2000.
Yep.
And I remember when I first got started in crime prevention, I got on this assignment, and it was great. I loved it. But back then, people didn't have laptops and web cameras, so they were just starting to buy them then. And of course, they'd have a problem. They'd get scammed, or they'd go into a chat room or a underground forum and give out their credit card. So they'd call the police, and the police would say, "We'll do our best to help you out, but in the meantime, why don't you call the crime prevention unit?" So that's how I really got started in cybercrime. And every day, a few times a week, we were getting calls from somebody saying, I got scammed, I got conned, I got hacked, I had a new virus, what do I do? It was a really steep learning curve for me, because I had never worked in cybercrime. And I made some real observations about the sector, and I learned some, I think, valuable lessons that helped carry me through my whole career.
Yeah. When you moved to Calgary, how old were you?
I was in Calgary twice. Once in grade 5 for about 6 months, and then we moved to Grand Prairie, and I lived there for about 4 years, and then moved back to Calgary when I started grade 10.
Okay.
So I went through high school not really knowing anybody in Calgary, which was pretty difficult.
What high school was it?
St. Francis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when
Now, if I tell you, you'll know how old I am.
No, I'm not asking. I've done enough of these where I don't ask. When you came back, was your dad, you said he retired and that's why you came to Calgary?
Yes.
And why did the family pick Calgary?
When I had lived here in grade 5, my mom and dad bought a house, and then we left the house and rented it out while we went to Grand Prairie. And so I think the plan was always to come back to Calgary. And we all loved Calgary. I loved Calgary, and we had a few relatives. A few of my mom's sisters lived here, so we had some people here already.
I was going to ask you, like when I alluded to earlier, the bouncing around and kind of starting over and finding friends. And
Yes.
so when you hit, I can imagine when you started a new high school in grade 10, that's an awkward time in general,
Yes.
let alone coming from a different city to Calgary. What was your move? What did you do? Did you like go all in on school? Did you were you an introvert? Like how did you manage it?
Yeah, I was very introverted. I was really shy, extremely shy, and really never talked to anybody. I had a few friends that were mainly neighbors. And then I fell in with a group of girls that were really fun. And, we just, I just did high school stuff, did lots of sports. I played basketball and volleyball and track.
Yep.
And just always did that. And just did the typical high school stuff, really.
In your opinion, do you think sports kind of that, it's kind of that tool or that area where you can connect quicker? Like without sport, you can imagine walking through high school. You're like, I don't know where I fit. But for me, I feel like sport is a way to actually find community.
Absolutely.
And then it all starts clicking a little quicker.
Yeah. It does. And even like just participating or actually observing, it was a big deal in St. Francis. I mean, the football and the basketball and even volleyball, you'd go out on a Friday night to watch the football. And it was just a big part of bringing everybody together and team spirit and wearing the outfits and cheering. And, I've always loved sport. And getting on the police, it was tough because a big part of the police was this obstacle course that was all based on passing this obstacle course in 2 minutes and 3 seconds. And I was very fit, and we haven't really even talked about my whole fitness thing, but that was kind of like as an aerobics instructor, I thought I was pretty darn fit.
Yeah.
Like I could drop down and do 50 push-ups, no problem, leg lifts, thigh burners, that whole aerobic scene. I was involved in that big time before I got on the police. But I had to pass this darn obstacle course in 2 minutes and 3 seconds. So I go out, run this thing. You have to run around this gym 6 times, sprint. You have to jump this 6-foot wire fence. You have to pull an 180-pound dummy. I mean, your father would have done all that physical stuff. And I mean, guys are just naturally stronger and more powerful. Well, I thought I was pretty tough. Well, I finished this thing, and I mean, I wasn't even close. I was well over 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Got sick in the sink and the whole bit. And I thought, okay, if I want to get on this job, I'm going to have to do this. Yeah. So I went out to training, and I'd see a fence, 6-foot fence. I would get out of the car and I'd jump it. And, I'd pull things around. And I was actually, I met this person at the fitness club I was teaching at. And he was training for the national track team. He was on the national track team. So I said, can you help me run faster? So sure enough, we went to the track, and it's really a skill running fast. You got to lift your knees, you got to use your arms, everything. Get on your toes. So he helped me, and I tried it again. Didn't pass. I think it was 2:05. And then the third time I passed it in 2:03. I might have been at 2:02. And it was very tight. In the meantime, though, fell in love with this fellow and married him. So
crazy. Just all like click, click, click.
But he was an athlete. Yeah. He was training in decathlon. And so our whole life has always really been around sport. Cool. We got our daughter involved in track, and she played volleyball at a really high level. So sports is a big part of life.
And it transfers into so many different facets too, right?
It does, yeah.
Like on the workforce, just mental health, like it's just
everything,
it's just everything.
Yeah.
Some people don't get it though, hey? Like, do you ever, I always find it kind of interesting when I come across people that don't have that background. Yeah. Like, sport was never part of their life, but they're still obviously successful and doing their own thing. But sport's been a giant part of my life too. I'm like, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be close to where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it too. I mentioned I play tennis. I'm a huge tennis fan to watch, but actually play it as well, and have been playing for many years. But my husband and I, we decided that we were pretty good. We just go and play in the community tennis court. So we figure we're pretty good. So we joined the Calgary Tennis Club. And there's people there of all different skill level. So we decide to go in a tournament. It's our very first
Like
tournament.
mixed doubles or singles?
Mixed doubles,
Okay.
playing together.
Okay.
So we get in this tennis court, and we're playing against a couple of 13-year-olds, and we thought, oh, we've got this beat, right? Well, they start serving at us. We can't, we're just like, my husband swings, misses. I'm like starting to get mad. Like, come on, hit the ball, I can't hit the ball either. I was so embarrassed. So we're in a court where the clubhouse is right there. People could actually watch us. At one point, my husband swung and he hit himself and he got a nosebleed in the middle of this. This is a competition. So then we failed miserably in that tournament. And then we went in several other tournaments afterwards. And we went through the ups and downs of playing with, somebody like your husband or wife or whatever in something that's competitive. And you go through lots of pitfalls. So we had the arguments, we got through it. And now we play quite competitively together on different, if we can, different times. And, been playing for years and I've gotten better, but I've been beaten by 13-year-olds and I've been beaten by 80-year-olds. So it's a tough sport. It's very technical. And I think most sports, they humble you because there are people that are just really good at it. They've had training, formal training since they were really very young, and they get to be very good at it.
Well, the interesting thing about tennis, anything like tennis, golf, I water ski. That's my thing. But they're all technical.
Yeah.
What I like about water skiing, and I'm guessing be curious to see what you say about tennis, but it's like the older I get, I can still get better.
Yes.
Because it's technical. And so I like having that challenge in my life.
Yeah.
And that kind of, keeps you young, keeps you fit, keeps you moving, does all the things.
Yeah.
But it's fun to have that sport as, for me personally, as I get older, that I can do good at, right? Because it feels good to get good at something.
Yeah. And you get better.
Yeah.
Just even by watching other people.
And thinking about it too, though.
Yeah,
I find like when you think, you can visualize it and do it. It all works. When you were coming out of high school, did you have a plan? Did you know what you were up to?
No, I didn't have a plan. I went to university and, I had a number of jobs. My first job was working at the Calgary Zoo as a gate girl. Okay. So I did that for a number of summers. It was fantastic. And then I actually, while I was going to university, I got a job on the grounds crew at the university. So I was outside working in the sun. We had a certain area that we'd have to take care of and do the shrub beds and water and take care of the plants and pick the weeds and stuff like that. So I did that a number of summers, and I enjoyed it so much that I actually didn't go back to university, stayed on at the university working full-time, shoveling snow in the winter, watering the plants on the campus buildings, and then working in the greenhouse. So I did that for a number of years. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Yep. And then at a certain point, I got involved in the fitness scene in the early 80s. And I was super shy, still very introverted. And I just started doing aerobics.
Just going to classes?
Going to classes. And then I thought, I can do this. And pretty soon they asked me if I could train to be an instructor because I was always pretty fit and such. So I said, absolutely, I would love to. And I just started to come out of my shell.
So I can imagine being in the front of the class.
Yeah.
You got to show up with energy. You got to present yourself and guide the class. You got to
talk. You're all wired up. You can't be an introvert. You're dancing around in tights and leg warmers. And, back then.
Classic.
Oh, my goodness. Classic. We really got into it. And I was teaching 2 and 3 times a day. Wow. And then, I became a manager of a fitness club, really popular one, and got into that whole aerobic scene. And that lasted several years. I did that. And big time, where we would go and enter these competitions. So we'd go to the bank downtown. And I actually won an Alberta aerobics challenge in, I think it was like 1986.
No way.
Yeah. And it was just fun. You practiced and you got in with all the instructors. You had to train the instructors. We do demos all over the place. I remember doing one in the Corral, doing one downtown in the Hudson Bay, to promote the club, but also the aerobics in general. And it was a real scene. It was a real era. And we had so much fun. It was almost like that Studio 54 kind of feel.
Like you light up when you talk about it. Like it's like
it's fun.
And to come out of your shell like that.
Yeah.
Like what do you think What do you think allowed that to happen? Like, what was it just like click for you? I'm like, I'm going to chase this.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I mean, I think you get feedback from people where they kind of get the energy from you.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody, so that made it easier to come out of my shell.
Right.
And I had to do it. If I wanted to keep that job, I really had to do it. And I think I was getting more and more mature as well.
Yeah.
And it was just... It really helped me in life. And it helped me because I was mature when I got on the job with the police. It was, a little bit of luck, timing, hard work to get on the job.
Yeah.
And I think that because I was mature already, that helped me once I got on the police.
When you say the aerobic scene, I think of that lady, Charlene Prickett.
Yeah, Charlene Prickett. Yeah, I knew her.
That's my...
She was amazing.
Yeah, that's my... As soon as you start talking, I have like flashbacks to right to her. Like just sitting... on TV. She had a show on TV, right?
Yeah, she did.
And she had this like wooden kind of like seat that she kind of like hung from the ceiling.
Yeah.
It looked like a bird's nest, but anyways.
That's right.
It's a very obscure memory of that.
Yeah.
Was it a tight-knit community? And was it fierce competition? Like were people angling for different jobs, different times, different like classes?
I think so, yeah. I mean, certain time slots were more popular than others. Certain instructors were better at certain types of classes. But it was competitive. So our club was competitive with the other clubs, and there were certain personalities that really jumped out. I mean, here in Calgary, Helen Vanderberg, Ivy Dunn, just some of the people that I dealt with. And it was very competitive in that respect. But also you had to be fit.
Yeah.
Like you had to be strong to do that many classes, have that endurance. And back then we actually did the classes with the students. We didn't just walk around. So it was really, we got super fit and probably hurt ourselves in the meantime.
And back then, right now there's, whether it's supplements, whether it's recovery, whether it's like, all that, those like leg braces now that are, you can put your legs in and turn
copper.
Like all that stuff. But back then,
nothing.
There was
nothing. Terrible shoes.
Yeah.
Terrible shoes. It was really all about wearing the best outfits, right?
Yeah.
You'd have the tights, the thongs.
Yeah. Bright colors.
Bright colors. We went through that whole phase, the oranges, the pinks, the greens. So there were lots of different phases of fashion. But no, the shoes were not very good. We jumped around on a hard concrete floor. And we did probably some exercises that were not the healthiest. Yeah. So
bad form.
Oh, totally.
Repetition, like all the bad things.
Yeah.
How many years did you do that? 7, 8?
Oh, I almost did it for 20 because I started in early 80s. And when I got on the job on the police in classes, I actually got out in front of all the recruits and I would, whoever wanted to come, do some aerobics with me.
Way.
So I taught then, and then I continued teaching while I was on the job. I was teaching at the Glencoe, Heavens, Fitness Plus, all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're like are you all in on this? Did you know, did you think it was going to be a career in the fitness industry?
Fitness thing?
Yeah.
Not really, no. I don't think so. It's pretty tough unless you own the studio.
Yeah. Did you ever think about that? Or were you just the community, the people, being fit, like the whole...
Yeah.
That was kind of...
Yeah, I think it was tough to stay really focused in that area for too long, yeah.
What's the transition? Like when, was it from there to the force? Is that kind of
Pretty
what happened?
well, yeah.
So talk about that moment in time.
It was, again, it's timing and it's luck, I think, in life. And at that point, I was mature. I applied, and I was really fortunate to get on the job. I passed the physical. They put you through just a number of tests, and then you get into recruit classes. And because I had grown up in a police environment, I kind of knew what to expect. But still, there were some surprises for sure. And it was just, it was all new, that's for sure.
Did your dad ever talk to you about getting on the force? Did you guys ever talk? Did those conversations ever come up? Like in some way? And what I'm angling towards is like when you decide to apply, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, he probably would not have wanted me to. Yeah. He passed away way early, so he never knew I joined. So he wasn't around. So I really didn't have that, that bouncing board
Yep.
to go with. So a lot of the things that I knew about the police, I'd seen,
Yep.
I'd lived, but no, I didn't have anyone in that respect. I remember it was kind of fun because you get into recruit classes with this whole group of people that you've never known. You don't know them, they're just, but you get very close to them because you're in classes for, I think it's about 4 months in total.
Yep.
And we're in this little school in Northwest Calgary, and it had a lot of brass doorknobs and brass fittings and stuff like that. So if you messed up, you'd have to polish brass after classes. And so we spent a lot of times polishing brass because they make you feel like you're expendable, right? So, you didn't do this, the whole class has to polish brass. So I remember and we'd have parades. We'd have a parade square, and we're all lined up. And what they would do is have a drill sergeant. They'd have your sergeant that was in charge of the recruit class, and they'd walk around and they'd do inspection. So you'd have to line up, and they want to see that your boots were all shined. And we'd wear these caps, and they'd make sure that the vinyl on the caps doesn't have fingerprints. You had to be perfect, no lint or anything. And they'd come around, and they'd have like the sergeant and the inspector and the deputy chief would march around. And one day, this drill sergeant, who is right out of Hollywood, I might say, and there were a lot of the officers that were like the firearms instructor, the drill sergeant, they could have been Hollywood actors. They were so real. Anyway, the fellow stops in front of me. This drill sergeant stops in front of me, like 2 inches in front, almost like Full Metal Jacket, right? And he stops and he looks at me. He looks down. He looks up in my hat. Looks at me, and he's like looks me in the eye, and he goes, "There will be no lipstick on my parade square." Well, I didn't know if I should laugh or if I should cry. I was so scared. I'm sure I did sneak some lipstick on his parade square after that. I mean, you can't, what can you do?
Yeah.
You can't take that out of people.
For sure. What was the pull to apply? Like, what was it that, was it just do you think it was being around it, like growing up around it, or was there another reason why it pulled you in?
I don't know. It's almost like it was a natural progression, I think, for me. I really understood it. And I really didn't know at that time, but it was good timing.
Yep.
And they were hiring.
Yep.
And I thought, well, I can do this job. I love the physical. I knew there were tons of opportunities. I mean, you could work with dogs, horses, helicopters, traffic, enforcement, investigation. I love all that.
Yep.
And it was very physical. I never wanted to just be sitting behind a desk. So I liked that aspect of it. And I thought, I can do this. And I think I was mature enough as well. I was not right out of high school. I had some life experience, and I was ready for what you have to deal with. I mean, it's life.
Was it also because, I don't want to imply anything, but like school, like when you drop out of university.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. I dropped out of Mount Royal 3 times.
Oh, okay.
And so, from our context, my younger brother's a fireman now.
Oh, interesting.
So it's sometimes when school isn't your fit, you're looking for other things, right? Whether it's trades, whether it's fire, police, like it just, there are possibilities. They kind of show up as like, okay, maybe that's the path. Yeah. Because school just isn't for everybody.
Yeah, it's not. And I did return. I mean, I went back to school while I was on the job. I did a number of university courses. Yeah. I did a number of certificates, general management and security management. And so I did a lot of those kinds of courses while I was on the job and continued to learn. And I ended up getting my master's, actually, which was, it was pretty good. While I was on the job, I did it through distance. Okay. And they use all your past education, and they put it towards credits so that you can then take this course. So that was a lot of work. And so I mean, I didn't stop learning, and I continued to take courses while I was on the job. They do fantastic training within the police service and give you lots of opportunities to take courses. And you have to take courses as well as part of the job. Yeah. So I continue to do that. I think that's important to keep your brain working. Totally.
Like when we were talking about off camera, we were talking about the nightclubs and the culture, all the different places in the city. When you get on as being, you're more mature, did that allow you to kind of handle some of the things that you saw and had to do and just because your head was in a better space? You know, you had more life experiences?
Yeah, I think so. And you have to make decisions.
Yeah.
But I remember I first got on the job, and what they do is they send you out to a district and you work the street and you have an officer coach. But I got asked if I would work on a hooker sting. So I said, absolutely. Are you kidding?
You were just
I'd
like
love to.
fired up about it?
Oh, well, I had, again, like teaching aerobics,
Yeah.
worked in the nightclubs, been in that whole scene, seen the dancing and the whole partying atmosphere. And I thought, yeah, I think I can do this. So they said, okay, you're going to have to wear some clothes and look like a hooker. No problem. I've got the clothes.
I got this.
I've got all the clothes. So in Calgary, there's the A, B, the C stroll. They'd send you out to different areas. You
Yep.
had a cover team. They wire you up, talk about officer safety. And this is just as I've gotten on the job.
Yeah.
This was all new. And so I said, absolutely. So I ended up doing about 3 or 4 of these hooker stings. And they would go several nights. And you would stand there on these strolls. You'd get approached. You'd do the communication for the purpose of prostitution. You'd say to the John, just drive up the street and I'll meet you there. And meanwhile, you get picked up by your cover team and they get arrested. And you may not see them for 9 months when they decide to go not guilty and go to court. And they're going, wow, what happened? How did this happen? They had no idea that they were talking to an undercover police officer. So that was a really good experience. And I think I was mature enough to handle that.
Yep.
I probably fit in on the C stroll more than the A stroll
Yeah.
at that point. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Wait, how long were you on the force for?
25 years.
That's full pension?
Yes,
25,
yeah.
25 years.
Yeah.
I grew up with a lot of people that were on the force.
Oh.
So I, when I was going to school with these kids in elementary, you watch their dads come home off shift,
Yeah.
they're sleeping all day. And
Yeah.
so I've been around it.
Yeah.
A really good friend of mine was a K-9 cop in town for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So I've just been around it. Mm-hmm. To be on the force for 25 years is a wildly long time. Did you know you can make it all the way to the end, 25 years?
While we were in classes, we'd always have these officers that would come and talk to us, and they'd say, you know what, your career is going to fly by. It is going to be over before you know it. And that's definitely what happened with me.
Yep.
It did fly by. I took opportunities. I worked on the World Police Fire Games for about 3 years, actually. I was seconded to it full time. And I worked at a really high level with the CEO of the games was the fire chief, Wayne Morris, who was just an amazing person. I just thought the world of him. He was just an amazing guy, great leader, and but all these firefighters. So I got to know a lot of the firefighters, got to know the police officers.
Yep.
I did all the communications, so I helped write all the, media releases, plan the news conferences, all the stories, the articles, the graphics, the photos, and all that kind of stuff. And so I worked full time on that as a police officer.
Yep.
Traveled, got to go to Australia and Sweden to deliver the final report. And I also, we had a bit of a deficit at the end of the games. We had all this stuff, T-shirts and caps. We opened a store at Chinook Mall, and I managed that store for several months and selling all this stuff, and so those are the kinds of things that I did that really the time just flew by. My career flew by. Then I'd go back to the street. I worked in fraud investigations for a number of years. And then I was really fortunate, and timing was perfect for me to get into this area of crime prevention in early 2000 because, again, cybercrime was just all new.
You've talked about luck a little bit.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like you put yourself in situations. Either you just put your hand up and how do you, is that a conscious decision to always be moving forward, to be taking opportunities, to be just gathering experiences?
I think so. I mean, I really think in life people should say, yes, I can do something. I can do it. I may not, maybe I have more nerve than I have talent. Like I want to be a lounge singer. But but I think, think, saying yes, I can do it and I can do something. I had a lot of experiences where people would come to me and what do I do? What do I do? And I don't know, I'll help you. I'll find something. Just as an example, I remember this mom called me up, and this was when I first got into crime prevention. And she said, my daughter is talking to someone on the internet. And she wants to go and meet him. And she's in love with this man. And I phoned the police and they can't do anything about it. And I said, well, that sounds weird. Like, how old's your daughter? 16. Well, and they're not going to help you. And she goes, no, they can't help me. So I said, well, come in and talk to me, because that just doesn't make sense. So she comes in. It turns out that her daughter lied, said she was 24 when she was 13. She ends up meeting this guy, talks to him for 3 years. She's in love with him. She wants to go to New Jersey to meet him. He's 48 years old. So I said, well, I can see why the police don't really, where do you start an investigation that's 3 years long and you lied, said you were 24. Back then, there was no process either. And the police really didn't have a lot of capacity for investigation at that point.
Yep.
They didn't have all these, child exploitation teams and such. So I said, leave it with me. I'll see what I can do. So I made a bunch of phone calls and I did something that's kind of unheard of for the police. Police would not do this kind of unconventional thing that I did. And I just thought, I have to do something. And it's probably against policy. I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And I wrote an email to this guy, this 48-year-old guy in New Jersey. And I said, you are the subject of a police investigation. Cease and desist talking to this woman or this girl in Calgary. That was it. Never heard from this guy ever again. The mom was thrilled. The daughter probably not so much. Yeah. She lost the man of her dreams. But again, police don't do that kind of stuff. But I really felt like you have to do something. Yeah. And even, what you think is right. And I don't know, maybe you can't really do that kind of stuff sometimes. But, just saying yes. And I learned something from it. And I think the young girl learned something from it. The mother felt better about it. Yep. And it was just the right thing to do at that time. But I think you just take those opportunities, even if they don't work out. Yep. I worked on a project to try to bring a big cybercrime center here to Calgary. Timing was not right. We weren't the luckiest. Yep. But there was already something like that being planned in Ottawa. So 10 years later, it comes to fruition in Ottawa. In the meantime, we were trying here 10 years too early. But in that, tried as much and learned so much and met some really amazing people and built some real valuable, trusted relationships. And I think it advanced cybercrime for Calgary as well, Calgary Police.
The idea around timing, timing and luck.
Yeah.
It's kind of vague. It's not.
Yeah.
It's tough to trust it. How do you? And when I think about it, I'm like, well, I agree. I've had some good timing things, but you kind of got to, for those opportunities to happen, you actually have to put yourself in these situations and keep trying. Yeah. Good, bad, it works, doesn't work, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, just overnight success of like the timing clicked and I got to do the thing. Yeah. It's kind of it's a tough concept to actually understand.
It is. And I think you just have to get out of your comfort zone sometimes. When I first got on into crime prevention and we were doing cybercrime, and as I was mentioning, it was a learning experience. And I remember one time I was reading the newspaper, because we used to do that back then. And I saw that there was a professor at the University of Calgary that was teaching his students how to write Trojans, viruses, and worms. So I didn't know what to think of this. I thought, this doesn't sound good. So I marched into my sergeant's office and I said, hey, Sergeant, did you know that there's a professor at the university that's teaching his students how to write Trojans, viruses, and worms? And he goes, no, I didn't know that. That doesn't sound good. And I said, yeah, that's what I thought. So up we go, make a phone call. Again, a lot of nerve. Make a phone call to this professor, said, can we come and talk to you? And I can just imagine him, sitting across the table like this. Here's this world-renowned computer scientist, and here's two police officers coming to question him. And he's probably a little anxious, but he's probably kind of laughing as well. And he goes, well, hold on a minute. He says, I vet my students. I get them to sign non-disclosure agreements. And anyway, my lab is not connected to the internet. So there's no real fear of these viruses getting loose. But I didn't know that. And, until you put yourself out, you ask the silly questions. And I found out over the years that experts and people that have this real expertise in a specific area are only too happy to help you out with your silly questions, and you build those trusted relationships. And I called on this professor multiple times over the years, and he was always willing to help me. He was very generous with his time, and he was an expert in this specific area. So cybercrime is a very broad field with pockets of expertise. I mean, the smallest little thing, there's an expert, and there's an acronym to go along with that.
Just so many letters.
You have to learn. Oh my gosh. And all these viruses, they all have these fancy names, and these acronyms, and it's very specific. And again, very intimidating for people that are not in that area. But everybody looks to you as a police officer as if you know everything. And it takes a while to kind of get a rounded knowledge in the whole field.
As you're talking, this question keeps popping in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how, being on the force for so long, trying a whole bunch of different things, the idea around like mental fitness, and you deal with a lot of things. You deal with a certain type of people. The story about the young girl.
Yeah.
That occupies brain space.
Yeah.
As you're trying, this doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
We talk about it now, and you can just it's a quick conversation.
Yeah.
But all these experiences you've had, did you have something beside you that allowed you to manage it all?
Well, I think family is really a big part of it. My husband, he definitely was a sounding board for me.
Yeah.
My sister as well. She's a lawyer, and she was able to kind of help me, walk me through a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think just having somebody to talk to is really important for people. Especially, there are things that are upsetting that you see.
Yeah.
And obviously, the police always have those kinds of people that can help counsel you if you need it.
Yeah.
But for me, I dealt with things, and you never know how you're going to, what you do on the job as a firefighter, like your dad and your brother, how you impact people. You just never know. And they might be dealing with some things in mental health, and you're there to help them. So you can get some strength by just helping other people too.
Yeah. The cybercrime thing, when it starts in early 2000s, it's the Wild West. I remember getting my first email in 96.
Yeah. Okay.
And so early 2000s, things, it was everything was unknown.
Yeah, it really was.
How long were you in that, and did you end in that department? Was that kind of your?
Yeah, I did. I started in early 2000, and then I retired out of that area in 2013.
Okay.
And I continued working in cybersecurity. What I did in there was develop and deliver programs. Okay. So, I had one on identity theft and spear phishing and internet safety. So I'd go out to the schools, and I was presenting 2, 3 times, 4 times a week.
Wow.
Different communities, different people. And the more talks you did, the more people would come up to you and say, hey, can you come to my event, at my community center and such.
Yeah.
So I really didn't have a plan when I retired. They always say when you retire, have a plan. I had no plan.
Wait,
so
sorry.
Yeah.
Why do people always say that? and why does nobody ever know? There's this expectation that you're supposed to know, but nobody does.
Yeah.
There's a giant disconnect.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. People would always say to me, why don't you apply for this or that? And it just didn't feel right, So I didn't want to have another desk job. I didn't want to. Not that I had another desk job. I just didn't want a desk job, 9 to 5 kind of thing. So I just started my own company, and I said, okay, I can do presentations. And so I had known Roger Brault, with the Speakers Bureau of Alberta, and so he said, oh yeah, so he would book me for a few talks, and then people would just hear, oh, can you still come? So I continued to do that, and I've continued that for 10, 12 years. So it's been good.
The idea of starting your business, Was it because the other option wasn't on the table, like going to work for somebody 9 to 5? So your only option was to start your own thing, or had you been dreaming about it? Did you see somebody doing it? Like what put you on that
No,
path?
I think I kind of left in June. So we went on a bit of a holiday, and I never really applied for a job. I never looked at the newspapers, saw what was, because most of the time with police, when they retire, they work for security
Yeah.
companies and such.
Yeah.
And I was very involved in the security industry here in Calgary. And I knew about jobs, but I never applied. And then occasionally, if somebody would say, hey, why don't you apply for this? I remember applying for a bank job, and this was maybe 4 years after I had retired. But, I kept saying to my husband, he felt like it was time for me to leave. It was just like it's just time. And I'd say, I think I made a huge mistake. I didn't sleep for probably 8 months after I retired. I kept thinking
way.
I made a mistake. Yeah, because I loved my job. I loved what I was doing. But I just felt like, I just needed a time out. So maybe I should have just taken a leave of absence for a while and gone back. But I thought that I made the biggest mistake in my life. But I think my husband also felt like, you need that time.
Yep.
Yeah, it was time.
A lot of people don't hear that side, right? They see you where you are today.
Yeah.
They understand kind of your background, but those 8 months in between,
Yeah.
it's and for me, it's, I got fired from my last job, which is a traumatic, it's a different way to leave a job,
Yeah.
right? But there's that window of like, what the hell am I going to do? And then actually it weighs on you for, it could be days, months, or
Yeah.
whatever duration of time.
Well, especially when you do a job like I do, because, you might have 2 presentations a month. And so what do you do in the meantime?
Yeah.
You're like thinking, oh, okay, so I'm playing tennis, playing the guitar, walking the dog. So I say to my husband, I should get a job. I feel like I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden I'll get this big presentation somewhere, which I have to then really plan for. So I've done some big keynotes and big presentations that have stretched my ability, I think, and my knowledge in certain aspects.
Yeah.
And so I really have to dig deep and think about things. And presentations, you also have to entertain a bit.
Yeah.
It's getting up in front of people and telling stories, and there's a lot to it.
As I'm hearing the story for the first time,
Yeah.
it makes sense now. There's a bunch of dots on the board, whether it's teaching aerobics, just like there's just moments in time that allow you to do this right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you're doing it, you don't really understand that, do you? Like you're just having experiences, and all of a sudden here you are starting your own business, doing big keynote speeches, and it all kind of makes sense. Like you have the skill sets to do it.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
It's uncomfortable though, isn't it? Because you imagine if you were like in those 8 months of trying to like not sleeping and trying to figure it out, it'd be so interesting if you could tell yourself like something is going to show up because I have all these skills.
Yeah.
It's very vague, but it actually works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It is baby steps. All those years, all those experiences you had, all those difficulties you had, like, you go to a community center and they didn't have the right equipment, so you'd have to MacGyver something, and those all add to it. I mean, you're in this space right now, the technical things where things may go wrong and you have to make it work. You've got an audience right there. And all those difficulties and all those negative and experiences you have lead to where you are today.
Yeah.
And so I can get up in front of an audience and feel pretty comfortable in just about any kind of situation for the most part.
You touched on it earlier, just the idea of, 2 presentations in a month. And now you have all these days and all these hours to fill up.
Yeah.
You hear about those people when they retire, like, what am I going to, like when my dad retired, he retired at, after 30 years or whatever. And so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the days start filling up. But
Yeah.
can you be proactive about anything? Besides becoming a better athlete and like training to do that, do you have any ideas around creating momentum in the presentation speaker business? Like, do you actively go looking? Do you visualize? Do you like do research? Like, how do you give it a little bit of energy, not just to trust it to like, it's just going to show up?
Right. Well, I mean, I could be more active in social media, but I mean, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And I did try to I did 2 videos. And, it's always difficult watching yourself. I've done so many media interviews over the years. I
Yep.
mean, I was doing like 2 or 3 a week here and there, and I never watched them. I can't stand
the
watching or
worst.
listening to myself.
I get it.
So I get these videos made, and I can't put them anywhere. I don't like them.
Yeah.
But I do have a website,
Yep.
and people go to my website. I get phone calls all the time.
Yep.
So I still feel like I'm helping people
Yep.
because my phone number is out there. So I do stretch a bit. I do some online investigations, which keep me sharp as far as getting my way, maneuvering around the internet and doing such. And I feel like I'm doing some good work in that respect. I helped, I did a big investigation on revenge porn for this young girl in BC that was just, it was 5 years.
Yeah.
She had to look at her name, her videos
Crazy.
on porn sites. So I had to help take them down off of these porn sites. So I had some experience with DMCA Act, the Digital Media Copyright Act, just all these kinds of things that help keep you going because you have to continue to learn. And then you keep your name out there. I do a little bit of stuff on LinkedIn, but I'm not really a big fan. But yeah, people just find me. I had this man call me not too long ago, said, he got undressed in front of a web camera. What should I do? And I walked him off the plank because he was just devastated. And I said, you're up against these professionals. They do this professionally, and they use AI to enhance their ability to speak, to chat, no spelling mistakes. He got talked into it, getting undressed, and he was devastated. He felt like he was going to lose his job and everything. So I'm still helping people, giving them some advice, what to do. And in that respect, it keeps me going.
Keeps you sharp too, right?
Yeah, it does.
Now that you're in it,
Yeah.
like this phase, whatever this phase is, keynote, running your business, now that you're in it, does it make sense that you're here? And when you're on the force, you don't really know what you're going to do when you're tired. Does this all kind of make sense right now? Like, does this path feel like this is what you're supposed to do?
I think it does.
Yeah.
You just never know. Until it happens, you never know. People come up to you and they'll say, and you can use your expertise to help them.
Yep.
Then But you never know how you're going to impact people either. I remember going to a call with my partner back in, I think it might have been 1998, so a long time ago. And we were working the street. And we started our shift, and working night shift was 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. And so we're working our shift, and we first get on at 9, and we get a call from this woman. She's a daughter who says, my mom is depressed, sad. She's got a whole bunch of pills. She had been drinking, and I think she's going to try and commit suicide again. So we went off trying to find this woman. So we went to all the places that she frequented. We went and checked all the hospitals. We spent several hours looking for this woman. We did everything we could possibly think of doing. And at some point, we just said, we phoned the daughter back and said, we can't find your mom at this point, but if you hear anything, let us know. And we continued our shift, and we kept looking for, but we kept going to different calls all through the night. And then shift is over at 7 a.m. And for me, I always had difficulty working night shift. It was just like 5 a.m., I'm just dying. 4 a.m., I'm dying. Anyway, it's like almost 7 a.m. We're heading back to the office. And I don't know, for some reason, I see this car parked kind of ajar, like kind of a little crooked in a tennis court parking lot where I'm familiar with this tennis court. There's usually no cars there. So I said to my partner, let's just check out this one car before we go back to the office. Check it out. There's this woman slumped over the steering wheel, had taken a bunch of pills. We called the ambulance, did the report, called the daughter, probably did an hour or two overtime. That was it. Never heard from this woman again. Until probably 5 years after I retired. So 2015, 2016 or so, I come home to my house one day, and there's a manila envelope on my doorstep. And it's from Professional Standards, Calgary Police Service. And my first thought is, that's like internal investigations. I'm in trouble. What did I do now? I mean, I'm retired. How could I have possibly gotten into trouble? Anyway, open up this darn thing, and inside is a card from this woman. And she said, I'm sorry it's taken so long, but I'm finally writing you a letter to say thank you. Thank you for just saving my life that day. Like I was so happy that she took the time to write this letter, but I couldn't believe it. It was like, I'm retired. And that was probably more meaningful than a lot of the things that I ever dealt with on the job. And you never know how you're going to impact. And I think police work is really important for that. You never know where you're going to help somebody. And your dad too. I mean, firefighting, it's kind of a thankless job. And I've known lots of firefighters and they've helped me a lot. And I think it's really, public service is very important.
Yeah. That's rare, for someone to actually take the time and reach out after, 5 years and find you and remember it.
And she said, I just took my grandchildren for a walk and I'm so happy to have time with my grandchildren.
Yeah.
That was shocking. But again, even if you're not on the job, you still feel like you're maybe doing something good. You see something or you say something to somebody to help them, any way you can. I think you can't take that out of your blood.
For sure. What's interesting is the idea of like creating ripples has started to come up in these conversations.
Yeah.
Because you never really know. And same thing, I would guess, when you're on stage, whoever you're talking to, you have no idea what they're experiencing and why they're there. And just like the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
If one person makes a different decision or something, and it's just, you don't know.
Yeah.
Same thing working on the force for all those years. Like, usually you hear about how, unfortunately, you're all assholes, and it's like that, right? And that's the general sentiment around it.
Yeah.
But I think it's those ripple effects that we just don't really understand, or we can't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. You always think about. It always seems to be a negative confrontation. Working in crime prevention was very positive because you were always out helping people, talking to people, and it was a very positive place to work. So when I did retire, I didn't want to step back and work somewhere. Yeah. This was the best place to work. So I didn't want to go backwards. I wanted to continue going forward. And I really, I felt very fortunate to have worked in that area. It gave me lots of positive experiences as a police officer, that's for sure, with people.
Which is rare too, right? To feel that connection to a job. And to have a positive impact on people. Yeah. It's all rare.
It is rare.
It's like not a lot of jobs you can kind of fill that up.
Yeah. And, I think for the most part, all the police officers I worked with, they all were very committed to their area. But I think everybody has their strengths. Some people were really good at traffic, Some people, like your friend, was a great canine guy. My sergeant, who I'm still friends with, he worked in canine, and you can't take that out of him. He loves canine and, paid great, all the memories to his dog that he had and trained with and such. You can't take that out of a person.
No.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
The keynotes that you give right now, is it dependent on the audience or what the whoever the company is, what kind of message they want? Like, do you twist it to fit kind of their ideas or their objectives, and you just kind of pick the stories that kind of fit with their whatever their concept is? Is that how they all kind of play out?
Yeah, sometimes, for an example, I might go to a school. So typically it would be the content around cyberbullying, online exploitation, sexual exploitation and coercion, privacy settings, that sort of thing. If I'm going to speak to a keynote, a corporate function, I might talk more about, just information security. But my whole approach, what I've learned, because you don't want to just keep spouting off the same stuff over and over, have a strong password, we've heard this millions of times, right? So I try to make it, and I really firmly believe that cybercrime is an attack on our state of mind. It's our mind. Those cyber criminals, those scammers out there would rather come after us any day than all of those technical safeguards that we use. And that's because we have weaknesses. Nobody has spent millions and billions of dollars on our brain. They've done that with the technical safeguards. They're built not to fail, but we fail. We fail, really dynamically when our mind is cluttered and distracted and disrupted and, in a state of chaos. So that's what they do. These cyber criminals, they have tactics, techniques, and procedures around social engineering. And they're meant specifically to distract us. And it works. And you look at just about all those attacks, they have to do with, really distracting people. And tricking them into clicking on something. They might use timing, a certain time of the year, Christmas when it's busier, tax time. Timing is really important. Emotions, they'll use emotions, love, hate, happiness, trust, all those sad, make you feel really bad, so you pull out your credit card. So emotions work, and impersonation, especially these days with AI. They can use the voice print. They can use the chat GPT, no spelling mistakes. They use it all. Photos, fake photos, the videos, everything. So it's really fooling your mind. It's deceiving and manipulating your mind. And that's where I think cybercrime starts. And that's what I end up talking about is the human element rather than the technical, because I'm not a technologist.
And the technical you can Google.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can, I feel like, that I think the interest, when you can Google the answer, it's like a commodity, right? You're like, to your point, I can't go up there and say, change your password. Because that's lost on the audience.
Yeah, it is.
But when you can actually, talk about the human side of it, I think that, I'm guessing there's a connection point there.
There is. And, I tend to listen to other people speaking at conferences. And one time I heard about this website that's hosted in Eastern Europe. So I went to the website, and what it does, it looks for people that have not changed their password on their IoT devices. So say a Ring doorbell or a Nest or any of those surveillance cameras, you have a default password from the manufacturer.
Admin.
So you change it. Well, people don't. They use the word password. So I go to this darn website hosted in Eastern Europe, and I see Calgary, because you can search by city. I look, and there's this couple. And they also show the longitude and the latitude. So the longitude and latitude came back to the Eau Claire area. So they were streaming 24/7 from their dining room. And I saw this woman go by in her house coat. They have a cat. The man's walking around, and I thought, oh my gosh, these poor people, I got to tell them. And this was just a few years ago, like a couple years ago. So I zip in my car and I go down to Eau Claire and I start knocking on doors because it looks like a condo. So I knock on all these property managers. I said, and I show the picture of, does this interior look like one of your places? No. Well, it turned out it was the internet service provider's hub in the area. That was the longitude and the latitude. So I phoned the security they couldn't help me out either. I wrote 2 letters to the website and I said, please take these poor people off your website. They're streaming. They don't know. They didn't even respond to me. I wrote 2 letters to the Alberta Privacy Commissioner. Couldn't help me. Meanwhile, at my presentations, I show not their picture, but just show the inside. And I said, I have been looking at these people. If you know them, please let me know and we'll notify them. Anyway, about 2 or 3 months ago, they quit streaming. But meanwhile, I celebrated 2 Christmases, 2 Halloweens, and she was an amazing decorator. She had the most incredible Halloween decorations in her place and a 50th birthday. Because they had a 50th birthday and then they have the date of the event. So if I was data mining, if I was a voyeur, if I was casing a place for a B&E, I could have done lots of things. But obviously somebody told them and they quit streaming. But this is the danger. People don't know. And those are the kinds of, I guess, examples that I give that really, people go, oh, darn, I didn't change my default password on my Nest or my, Ring doorbell camera, because you think you're doing a good thing by using the security devices that are available. But there's also, nobody tells you these things. So those are the kind of, I think, examples that I try to tell to different audiences. That one I might tell to just a keynote or something like that to a group of people. But I might change it up for, if I'm doing an audience with police, I have a couple coming up that are with police. And so it's a different type of thing I might talk about with them, and how IA might be coming in to impact police work and vice versa. Police go to a senior's home, and the senior at that home now has bought themselves a robot. And so answering the door is a robot. And the police are now talking to a robot because you can buy them. They're about $20,000, How do you deal with that as a police officer? You're going to give them instructions?
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of things.
It changes. It's always changing.
Drones and everything is going to change dramatically how police are doing their work. Yeah, it's going to be tough.
As all this changes, it's got to keep your mind just going. It's just
constantly.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little scary too. But that's why I think the tennis is helpful.
Yeah. It's funny when I was asking you earlier about how your mental fitness side of it. I was wondering how sport and just physical activity fit into your day-to-day of keeping everything sharp. Yeah. Is it a conscious decision to actually stay active, and it does wonders for your mind?
It really does. Yeah. In the summer it's easy because, I join a club where you can go and play any time of day, but in the winter it's a little different, and I haven't joined a winter club that I can play tennis in. So I just get asked, I get invited in, and they'll just put me down on the list. So I play about 3 or 4 times a week, which is still pretty good. Great. But the days that I don't play, I really miss it. And I've found that, you meet a whole new group of people. It's a real social circle of like-minded people that you enjoy hanging out with. And I think that's really important for your mental fitness, that you get friends in different, I've got police friends, I've got tennis friends, and sometimes they collide, but usually they don't. And you just, last summer we decided that we were going to, just changing the subject a little bit, the guitar my husband and I took up guitar during COVID. That's where the lounge singer part comes in.
I can't wait for that one.
So that's helpful for the mental. It gets your mind thinking, and, so I've only been playing maybe 2 years or 3 years, but we saw a poster up on a light pole in our neighborhood of this guy that comes around and teaches you guitar. So he comes in every other weekend, and we play a little bit. But we decided that we were good enough that we were going to hold a Stampede breakfast last year. And so we have this big old wood stove in our backyard. We lit up did pancakes, and my husband and I did a set of music for the audience. Wow. I love dressing up, of course. And I dressed up like Johnny Cash.
Amazing.
And Dolly Parton. I just do the old cowboy songs. Yep. That's my thing, our old cowboy songs. So, Patsy Cline, George Jones, Tammy Wynette, that kind of stuff. Yep. So we did this, and I think in that whole thing, just getting out and stretching your, your nerve. Yeah. I got more nerve than I have talent when it comes to playing guitar. But we had the speakers, we had a microphone, and singing and playing like that was really fun. It just, kind of mental health. Yeah. It's very, very good for you. And some people actually danced, so we did keep a tune.
Amazing. Success. Obviously, we're laughing about it. Between sport, creativity around the music, without that, it's dull, right? It's just...
You got to keep doing stuff.
Yeah.
You got to just keep doing, bike riding. I mean, Calgary's a wonderful place to get out, even in the winter, even when yesterday was still windy, bike riding like you did, getting out and walking around the river. Yeah. Bike riding, of course, is fantastic. You can still do it regardless of the weather. on the bike paths. I mean, I think that's really important. Running.
Yeah.
I like to get out with my dog, walk my funny little dog.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another group of people that you can meet when you go
Yeah.
on the same bike, pardon me,
Totally.
dog path
Yeah,
every
totally.
day. You see
Morning,
the same
morning.
people.
Yeah.
And you get to be friends with them through
sure.
your dog. You don't know their name, but you certainly know the dog's names.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So cool.
it is fun.
Thanks for doing this.
Very welcome.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, my shtick is I don't do any research on people. All I do is check to make sure they're an artist, athlete, or entrepreneur. So when I went to your website, I was like, okay, that checks the box. But I just, I clicked a couple pages. I was like, this is it's such a cool story.
Well, thank you.
It's rare. Like I've never heard of anybody that like you that does this. So it's
wow.
It's really cool that you exist in this city. And
Yeah. Oh, neat.
yeah,
I also wrote a book.
well, shit. Slide that in at the end.
I know. I just thought of that when you said about the website, but it's on my website. It's called Cybercrime Awareness, Prevention, and Response. Cool. So that was published in 2019, and it's available through the publisher. And it's a great textbook.
Yeah.
It's not like, you're not going to read it at night, at bedtime kind of thing. But it's really good. It's got key terms. It's got some very good Canadian precedent-setting examples and stories, and some stories from my job. But anyway, that really stretched me a lot. Writing, I think, is very helpful, and it really helps with your brain function and just forming sentences. I, of course, had people helping me edit it, which is important. But I was very proud to have that published and have that available through my website.
What gave you the courage to do that?
I had been thinking about it for a long time. And again, through just meeting different people, I met this publisher, and I kind of had to sell myself and say, look, I can pull this together. I've got it. I can do it. And I've got the time, which is important because not everybody has the time to write a book.
Yeah.
I'd love to write a second book, actually. I think things have changed a lot since 2019. But I think writing is very important. And to write a book, doesn't matter what kind of book. If you're going to write a children's book, any kind of book, people should just give it a try because it's tough to do, but when you get it done, you really feel like you've accomplished something.
But when you say that, though, like people should give it a try.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't.
I know.
And not just writing a book. It could be anything, right? It could be challenging themselves to walk around the reservoir, whatever it is, right? There's always like that barrier of like, you should.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Yeah.
What do you think what is that barrier?
I don't know. One thing that works for me is counting. And it may have come out through my aerobics, because everything was there. 4 more, 3 more, 2 more, 1 more. That always comes out. But even when I work out, I lift weights, I run, I do certain number of steps. I try and walk backwards. I walk backwards up a hill, but I'll do it in sets. So I'll say, okay, I'm just going to do 2 sets of 20.
Yeah.
And counting, I find, really works for me. Or I'll say, okay, I'm going to do this for 1 hour. It's going to kill me, but I'm going to do it for 1 hour. And then I'll get something done, and I really feel like I've accomplished something. So I think that might help. I'm not sure.
It's an interesting idea. It's like gaming it, right?
Yeah. And to start, I've heard all these, and I've read all these books, improve your memory, and then I forget the book somewhere, you hear all this stuff over the time, and then you never do it. But for me, that seems to work. And it doesn't always work, but it does work.
Gets you going.
Yeah.
Thank you. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
I was thinking about this, and I didn't want to be corny or anything, but I think that rugged is the word. And that's because we are surrounded. Calgary is surrounded by some raw natural beauty. If you really look around, the Rocky Mountains, Drumheller. I lived in Drumheller. It's amazing with all the canyons and the hoodoos. You go south. Been going south quite a bit to, we have some friends down in the pass, and just going through all those ranches, beautiful, and then going up north. I've got relatives up north, the farms and the lakes, and then inside Calgary, Fish Creek, the Bow River, going down the Bow River. That's raw, natural beauty.
Yep.
And Nose Hill. So we live pretty close to Nose Hill. And we have bobcats, we have coyotes, skunks. My dog last year got nipped by a coyote
No way.
on our street, and my dog was on a leash. So we have nature right
Yep.
here in our backyard. So I think Calgary is a very rugged place, and I think the people are very resilient and hardworking. And they're rugged, they're tough. We have to be tough, to get out and bike ride yesterday in that wind. Today is snowy.
Yep.
2 days ago, it was 30 above. A week before that, it was 30 below. Your shoes need to be rugged. All of a sudden the schnook comes along and everything wrecks your nice shoes. So I don't know. We have to be rugged
Yep.
as Calgarians.
Never heard that one before.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Really, really
Thought
cool.
about that one.
Yeah, no, it's a random question, but it's I always
good.
find
I love that question. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for Gordon for doing the intro.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to just kind of keep up with you and watch what you're up to and the lounge event.
I'll let you know.
Yes. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much.